started talking to Doug, he had this dream of starting a camp, and the dream had been fermenting for probably 20 years or so. And so he actually was able to be successful with his team in getting it going. And his story was a story of success. And then the COVID crisis hit, and Doug is going to talk about how he managed to help us get through, help the campers get through this. So Doug, I'm going to turn it over to you and Amy and let you guys go from there. Doug, we can't hear you. You're not muted, unmuted.
Thanks, Rob. Sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to say that camp and anything that happens at camp is not my success. It's the community's success. Everybody who has believed in this project and supported it, and then the amazing team and families and volunteers that make it happen. And I need to introduce Amy, who has been a longtime camp volunteer and then made a big career transition to join our team as directing our communications and marketing, and has really been the strategic lead on a big pivot that we've completed extremely quickly, as everyone has in relation to COVID. So Amy, you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone. Nice to hear a little bit about everyone whose faces I can see. And yeah, and I'm going to drive the slides, and I think, Rob, you may need to give me control so that I can share my screen.
Okay, we'll do that. Actually, Emily is on board. Emily, you should be able to go ahead and do that if you're ready.
So just a lot of you are familiar with North Star Reach, but for those that aren't, it's a local nonprofit providing a no-cost camp experience, really rooted in sort of summer camp experience for children with serious illness and kids who really don't have other opportunities to go to camp. We designed our infrastructure from the ground up to really support kids, get them out in an environment, deliver complex medical care in the woods, and have them sort of able to participate in what many of us are fortunate in this area to consider kind of a rite of passage of growing up. And it gives them a sense of normalcy. It gives them an opportunity to be independent, to meet other kids just like themselves, and really not have to worry about their medical condition for a little while. And that's a really rare opportunity for them. We're located in Pinckney on a 105-acre wooded peninsula on Patterson Lake and Woodburn Lake, and we just opened in July of 2016. So we're just coming up on 4 years, and we were just preparing to launch our 5th summer of camp. And we've served around 3,000 children and their families from across Michigan in the last 4 years. And that includes the Chicago area and even some more distant places as families seek us out for these opportunities. And I think, Amy, if you are able to, I think that one thing that we have learned, just not related to COVID, but the pictures we show of kids at camp, they're always smiling and having a great time, and they don't always look sick. But that doesn't really tell the full story of what children experience on a daily basis and what families go through to keep them safe. And so we're also in a period of transition from sort of startup capital campaign fundraising and just getting the operation established to really looking at long-term planning, visioning, and what it is we wanted to do with regards to our program outside of just summer camp. You know, we really want to be a resource to families and to kids, and understanding how we best could serve them. And so over the last year, we've been kind of planning that transition, looking at a fundraising campaign that was going to kick off this year, and some events that were going to support that, and then we were all thrown a big curveball. And obviously, having kids with severe medical challenges, we're currently serving children with epilepsy, children with congenital heart disease, kids who had an organ transplant, kids that have sickle cell disease. We were going to add arthritis this summer and add neuro-oncology patients. Bringing those kids together in a camp environment when they're at risk for immune disorders and other complications really is not an option. And so we had to think, okay, we exist to bring kids together, and we can't bring kids together. So how can we, what can we do? How can we pivot? And that's what we're gonna share with you. So here's Jason. Again, looks like a happy kid, enjoying the woods and camp. But as we'll see, there's a lot more to Jason than what we see right here. Jason is a twin, and on the right-hand side, you'll see his 15-year-old twin brother. They're both 15, and Jason's not been able to eat solid food until he just was able to try about 2 months ago for the first time. So he's been on sort of a liquid diet, feeding tubes, and there's his brother helping feed him. There's his 10-year-old sister helping him with a breathing treatment. And you don't see that when you see the photos, but what we're so privileged to have is all of these kids and their families to share regularly with us lessons and teach us about positive attitude, about being grateful, about courage to try new things and adapt in all sorts of situations, and ultimately really define resilience. And we've spent considerable time mapping our values about who we are as a camp and what's important to us. And really, the campers have driven out organically our values, and really we have chosen those that reflect what the kids teach us every day. And so making others feel special, having a positive attitude, and willing to grow and take risks are really what has driven us as we've gone forward. And you can go ahead, Amy, with the next slide. So as COVID started, I started to learn about it in end of February, beginning of March, and we had to sort of move quickly. We were in full recruitment mode of gathering applications for volunteers, hiring our summer staff, gathering applications for campers for summer programs that it became clear were not going to happen. And so we had to really be bold in making decisions, and making quick decisions like that should feel uncomfortable, and they did. We decided a week before the governor's stay-at-home order even came out, we weren't going to be able to do summer camp. And it really was a multifactorial decision, looking at our whole ecosystem and understanding that supply chains were going to be interrupted, that our volunteer medical staff were not going to be available to support these kids, and notwithstanding the risks to the kids to bring them together. So we had to make the really hard decision to cancel summer camp and really jump into what were we going to do to support kids and their families going forward. And
I'll just add that we are, some of you may know, but we're part of a larger network called Serious Fun Children's Network that was started by Paul Newman about 30 years ago. There are camps all around the world and 9 residential camps in the US. And North Star Reach, to Doug's credit, is the one camp that, as far as we've been told from the network, that was started by a medical professional. And because of Doug's medical expertise, we were able to move, I think, faster than any other camp because of his visibility, not just within a camp ecosystem, but the whole medical environment. And I think, that really set us up to be able to have some time to put a strategy in place and not just be reactive. So I don't think I'll ever forget the day we were sitting in camp and we made the decision. And we're a very small team, and like a lot of you, 4 years ago left kind of the corporate world. I worked for 16 years. I worked for a very successful Ann Arbor-based digital agency called Enlighten, run by a friend of mine, Steve Glauberman, and I was a content strategist and had been involved with Doug with the camp as a volunteer and decided to make the career change. Well, given my background, everyone looked at me that day and they said, Amy, you get to create our virtual summer programs. And I knew from my experience, working with very large nonprofits, healthcare systems, and, automotive companies from, Audi and, just working with large organizations, that one of the first things I needed to do was go to the subject matter experts. And even though I was intimately familiar with camp as a volunteer, I am not a camp director. I am not a program director. And so I went to that team and I extracted kind of what camp was in a way that was even beyond, is a little bit different than a lot of the strategy work where we were defining our values and our core mission. It was really trying to understand the full breadth of what we do in the online space to translate it, in the offline space to translate it online. Sometimes what can happen is you move so quickly to fill the digital channels that you're not remembering what you do well, and it kind of in human relations, really. So that's what we did, is we went back and we really only spent a couple of days on this, but it made all the difference. So it was me really distilling from the subject matter experts, our camping director, what we did for our program. So what makes our camp different? The children and families in our community feel a true sense of belonging. We all knew that. What we didn't quite know was reminding ourselves sort of the context and the community in which our camp exists. And as Doug was saying, those families and those kids, the very fact that they're kind of self-selecting to come to camp, they have incredible courage. They're in an incredible vulnerable space in their lives just because of illness. And as we all are now, as individuals, in our families, in our community, the world, like we're all kind of living what our families go through every day, and that you seek connection. And not everybody seeks connection, but our families and kids do. So that kind of reminded us of the space in which our camp programs exist. So then within that, sort of what we call the camp sweet spot was to say, what is camp? And oftentimes, our program, they're living it and they're like, we got the camp magic, and our program director is so talented with building community, but hadn't quite distilled it because he lives it. So it took someone like me that was a little bit of an outsider to be able to extract it and really clarify it, so we knew what we were trying to do in translating it online. And when we came to I would say those 3 slides, the ones that I'm showing you that we kind of worked on for about 3 days, when we came to this slide, there was almost like a visible kind of relief, like, oh, yes, there's some strategy. I was telling Doug, I don't know if some of you have heard this story, but I think it's true. As a strategist, someone told me this years ago, but an elephant that walks through a crowded marketplace will swing its tail and break everything in its place. But if you give an elephant something as small as a blade of grass, it will walk a straight and steady line. And this was our blade of grass out of the gate. So once we did that, now I'm transitioning to, okay, this is my sweet spot in my former life as a content strategist. So how are we starting to sort of create content and engage our community now that we know we're not meeting them in the physical space? How are we going to do that online? This was something that had always oriented me as the communication director, with social and digital being a large part of what I do, not exclusively. But I was always aware that, when you think about your content and the purpose of your content, for us, content that builds community is the point. Content that entertains is good enough. It's not to say that you can't have content that just entertains, but you're always looking to do the extra work of, so an example would be if we release a song on our social channel, we're always going to ask our community to try to do a call and response if we can, rather than just broadcast. So you're not just doing a one-way, broadcast out, you're trying to create a conversation. So what helped is, yeah, maybe I knew that, but now our whole team is aware of it. And it made absolutely so much different, because now people are brainstorming and coming up with all sorts of great ideas collectively of how to build community. The other thing that I brought from my background is working at Enlighten or digital strategy is knowing in the digital space that you can't do everything. And if you try to do everything, you're going to sink. There's just too much coming at you, and you have to constantly prioritize and scope. And you have to scope according to where is the greatest opportunity, because that's usually where everyone's focusing. But you also have to be mindful of where the risk is if you don't do it. So we're kind of navigating between those two endpoints, but always making sure you're scoping so that you're not trying to do everything, and constantly asking yourself, to prioritize. So again, we start to have kind of, more than a blade of grass. We've got some nice strategy in place. And one of the things, again, because we're moving into the virtual space, is not to just suddenly start filling all our social channels just to get the pipes filled with content. And one of the things we did was to use our strategy and to create some routines, just like we try to do in the habits in our daily lives. There's chaos. What settles you? Have a routine. Every morning, you do your meditation. Every night you do your gratitude list. It kind of settles you. So in our social channel, what we did is right away, we established a steady editorial calendar. And within the editorial calendar, we're starting to iterate some new ideas of how do we build community online. So we branded this little thing called the Mooseness Challenge. So we put out something that our campers can do, like, hey, tell us how you saw a moment of kindness, share it with us. And then on Friday, we'll have a live drawing for a t-shirt, building community all the way. We test a new sort of content idea where we're elevating our campers as experts, campfire song and so forth. So that just helped us to create some consistency in our editorial calendar. And one of those, actually there were many opportunities where we were able to, as Doug said, we had done a lot of strategy about other ways that we could grow as an organization. And suddenly we had permission and the ability to start trying some of those ideas. And one of them was this podcast with Patrick. So here's the camping director whose expertise, we were able to extract along with other people. And then Marianne Fithian, who joined our team recently and is the mom of Faith right here. And they started a new podcast. So I'm going to let Doug take it from here and sort of continue telling you a little bit about what we've been doing.
I think that crisis often gives you permission to be disruptive. And we took advantage of opportunities, to make rapid and bold transitions. We had a list of sort of long-term goals, but like many organizations, a big list of aspirations, but limited resources and bandwidth with which to, really attack and move some of those. And we expected some of those were, a year or two out on the horizon. And, the fact that we had gone through some sort of detailed planning and discussions and had that long-term plan in place allowed us to really sort of flip the script and put our in-person camping on the long-range horizon and elevate and accelerate all of those other opportunities. And I think we were able to, we stomped on the org chart and kind of blew it up. And we removed the hierarchy. We implored each staff member to really lead and innovate in their area, and their areas all got blurred. And we told each staff, you're going to be asked to do and assigned to do things that were never in your job description. And we're sort of setting all those aside and working in this special project period. And that allowed us to be really nimble and quick with decisions. I have another hat I wear in the community, and that's in the fire department, and been assistant fire chief at Scioto Township for a number of years. And in the fire department, we are very used to making very fast decisions based on little information and ambiguity, and assessing and then evaluating the plan, and continually moving. And so I sort of approached our organization in the same way, and I think we were able to do things that at any other time would have been really seriously questioned and would have been resisted, and allowed us to move with a speed that we needed to jump in. And we've I'm sorry, I just saw your message, Roger. We had some significant funding challenges, and that was connected to some donors unable to fulfill pledges they'd made to us, canceling a couple big in-person fundraising events that were really designed to fund the operation. And we're a very staff-heavy based organization. The great programming that we provide is based on the expertise of the people that we employ. So we had to find a way to sort of refocus all of those assets into a virtual space, and we couldn't do that with expending a lot of money on a custom tool, and really spending the time to do that, spending the cash to do that, and then understanding that there would probably be a high maintenance burden of that. So we really looked at what are the accessible tools that allowed us to achieve the goals, to really be able to focus on community, and just trusted them that they would work, and figured out how to sort of stitch them together. And we did have 2 family camp weekends. They were planned for the end of April, beginning of May, and we executed those virtually. And they went extremely well. I think better than even we anticipated. And I think that was largely because of the way that our families jumped in and were willing to try something new. They brought an energy. And again, at every step of the way, they're teaching us. And I walked away, our family weekends start on Friday evening, which we did. We launched on opening campfire on Friday evening, and they end on Sunday midday with sort of a wrap-up session. And, I got to Sunday midday on both of those weekends and really felt like we had just experienced a weekend together, and had the same sort of pangs of grief that we were going to separate and not see each other again for a while. And I think that's just a testament to both the intention we put into the program and what the families brought with regard to their willingness to sort of jump in and fully participate. I think that, again, this crisis period gave us an opportunity to rewrite the rules. At camp, we give all the campers the first 5 rules. That's our 5-finger contract. And then the campers get together in a cabin and create the rest of the rules of how they're going to live together for their time at camp. So, we empowered our team. We relied on the values that have always driven us. We pulled out our vision and looked at what we were able to accomplish and what was important to accomplish. As Amy said, we really wanted to make sure we weren't just filling a void, but that we were staying true to who we are and what are the benefits that the families get out of camp, and how do we preserve those, because there's so much one-way content that people can choose to tune into. We really wanted to have an interactive space that allowed our volunteers to participate, and our families and our campers. And I really think that while we're extremely challenged from a fundraising perspective, and our future back to in-person camp sessions is still unclear with regards to timeline, that COVID gave us a gift to be further led and inspired by our campers. You know, they just move with grace and courage and resilience during periods of uncertainty. And as Amy said, this is their normal routine. And they welcomed us into that world of, you know, having to think about whether it's reasonable to leave the house, and who you're going to go meet, and what you're going to do, and how you're going to accomplish all of your sort of daily needs at a time of limitation. And as we begin to emerge from that and get back together and experience the joys of being physically present with each other, and socializing and belonging back to a community that isn't online on a screen, we're going to all get a taste of what the kids feel like when they finally get a chance to go to camp, and they get to be in person with other kids, and they get to feel normal, and they get to experience freedoms that they don't get often in their everyday lives. And so I'm proud and privileged every day to work with a dynamic team that was able to sort of pivot and work courageously and passionately and push the boundaries, and you know, take on new responsibilities, and all focused on supporting kids and their families. And I'm humbled and reminded every day by our campers the importance of being resilient and grateful. And you know, we're excited because we're really just at the beginning of what this transformation means for us long term. We've always wanted to supplement our in-person programs in the summer with additional opportunities for kids to stay connected and be together, because as you can imagine, this 1 week of camp in the summer is the highlight of these kids' year, and they come together and they have these transformational opportunities, and they meet real friends who understand exactly what they're going through, and they don't have to explain anything. And then they go back to their communities, and they have to wait 51 weeks until the next camp session and come back together. And so we were looking at how can we virtually, how can we in regional, you know, gatherings, how can we continue this community and connection? And here we're launching that as a replacement for camp this summer, and excited to kick off 6 summer sessions that will all be run virtually, and will follow a schedule that's really authentic to what we do in the summer. And you know, we've just sort of pushed warp drive on some of those future goals that we had, and then we'll be fitting in-person programming back in once we're able to safely do that.
Excellent. I'll give you a great applause for that. Fantastic. Doug, I'm going to let, it's such a deeply moving and profound presentation. I'm just going to let people unmute themselves and make comments and ask questions, because I know I'm kind of blown away. I was the first time I heard it, and the second time I heard it, I'm even more blown away. So who would like to kick it off? There's so many different aspects of it. Just unmute yourself and talk up.
Well, I think this is the least important question, but we'll others think of important questions, Amy, what software, or just what were you using to connect people technically?
For the spring family camp, as Doug said, we just use accessible tools. So we stitched it together by creating a private Facebook group for the families that joined. So they had a space where they could upload photos, share comments and stuff like that. We made sure we had a registration, and for people that didn't have Facebook, we had a private page on our website that we knew that they could access. And then we used email and phone calls to reach out to families. And then during the session, we made sure another component was we sent a physical care package box. So there were families that had registered for the on-site experience that got a care package box, could not join us for either caregiving reasons or perhaps technical. So they still got an experience. And then we did wellness calls. So we had a mix of all, but we didn't use it. We didn't buy a single piece of software. And for our summer, the programs that are coming up, we can't use Facebook for kids. So we had to create a different private platform. But again, we went with a really inexpensive, we're using a WordPress, password protected space. It's an extension. It's basically a microsite. It's probably the cheapest. I shouldn't say the cheapest, but I think it's one of the most modest solutions of the other camps that we hear are investing in, learning management systems and Moodle and Jigsaw and stuff like that. We didn't want to go with a big, we weren't in a place to invest in a large CMS system for all sorts of reasons. So going organic is working really well for us.
Thanks.
Were you actually using Zoom for the?
Yeah, sorry. That was key point. Yes, we use Zoom to bring families into a space, and we have the waiting room and we have the extra security for that. So we had a invitation list and we can check people into the room, and we will be using Zoom also for the summer camp experience. And when kids go into their breakout sessions, when they're in smaller facilitated spaces, we're going to make sure we always use the rule of 3. So there'll always be 2 adults, we'll have at least 2 adults facilitating the session. So we follow the same rules and guidelines when we're at camp as we're going to do in Zoom. And I think anyone who's working with kids is doing that.
Is Zoom ADA compliant?
I guess I have to look into that as far as how you're using, captions and stuff like that. So, you've got the chat ability to be typing if someone's in there to help, when they're in a large gathering, actually it's muted. So that's where I guess we have to look into we are going to have captioning on our videos, kind of the balance of how you're providing accessibility in those spaces.
It just seems like you guys are doing such a marvelous service for the community. I thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I wanted to ask, I guess both Doug and Amy, how this process, which is a very creative, sophisticated process in terms of what you drew on, how similar is it to the process you used to create the camp over the last 10 years anyway? I mean, you've been engaged with a process of getting this to go and investing in finding people to be donors. How's this process continuous with what you've been doing?
I think it's, it's sort of like training for a 5K and then running a marathon. We in the same amount of time, we compressed years of planning and fortunately some experience in the camp program and moved at lightning speed. And while in getting camp to this point has been a very deliberate sort of step-by-step process where I think there was a reluctance to want to go too fast because we really wanted to get it right, and we really had to focus on so many different operational aspects that this pivot was almost the opposite. It was okay. It was a light bulb moment when Ami came up with sort of the three-legged stool that defined what was the secret sauce behind camp. Because I think it was one of those things, everybody knew it when they saw it, and everybody experienced it when they were there, but nobody could speak to it. And so really just putting it down on paper in a way that we got almost immediate and broad consensus, unlike anything we'd ever proposed before, that was iterative and took some discussion. This was everybody's kind of light bulb. And so
That's great. I wonder, Ami, can you go back to that? If you still could pull up that slide, that'd be great. I'd love to linger on that a little bit more, because it is, as an organizational psychologist, it's a brilliant synthesis.
Yeah, I think it just really helped us understand who we are and what's important to us, and then became important barometer for everything we did going forward. How's it going to fit into there? And it allowed us to just very rapidly sort of push aside ideas that didn't fit.
So could you walk through that again, Ami, and just tell us what that,
Sure.
that is?
Yeah, well, just the sort of the community context, which I think of is the humanity that is attracted to camp in this community, are again, they're kind of bringing an abundance of courage, and they're in a space of extreme vulnerability, and there's a real urgency for connection. So that creates a real energy that just surrounds our camp, and we give them a space to be seen and heard and valued. They're willing to let themselves be seen, and they're willing to, just through the fact that they're dealing with illness, to present their imperfect selves. And, just if you just want to say in a physical way. And then the camp experience, obviously there's community, and the two kind of using, the camp kind of acronym. We hadn't been working with this, but it sort of fell into place. And I think it fell into place beautifully because it was a organic thing in the world, and it just sort of presented itself. So these two were very known to our team. What we kind of put this help to really clarify is, when you're at camp, and particularly when you're with children that have chronic illness, it's like, it's not just any moment, it's this moment. Like, a boy that I met who was sitting next to me at a campfire once was saying, he was saying how his friends at camp were different. And he said something like, we know our time together won't last long. And he didn't say it in a sad way. He said it as a fact. And he said it with some gratitude, because he was just about to go on stage and sing with his friends. But there is a sense of, make the most of this time. And then there's a real sense of presence at camp. Like, we're here in this moment. Like, a day of camp feels like a year, because every moment is so full, because you're so present. So that elevated things that maybe were more, we hadn't quite put on the page. And now we can design online, we can design offline now, and kind of really capitalize on those elements as well. So that it comes back to this larger slide.
That's just brilliant.
And I think that it not only has it been an amazing and important planning tool, we're excited that it will become and guide our messaging as we move forward, because it has always also been equally as challenging to describe the impact of camp to families, to donors and to the community, other than to share stories of families and their impact. And I think that this is providing some framework for how we can dig deeper and share with people that what what is behind the smiles on the photographs and sort of the, oh, that's nice that kids get to go to camp, when it is so much more than that, because these experiences and these foundational skills that we're giving kids are shaping the rest of their lives. And we just need to get some data around and some longitudinal studies that show that these kids who rediscover a different identity for themselves, who leave camp with a new courage and a new independence, are then more able to tune into their own health, make better decisions, have better outcomes for everything else they do going forward in life. And when you're isolated in your peer group and you're different, and it's hard enough being a kid, but then to be in a classroom with other kids and look nothing like them and be very different, it can be really disheartening. And then they come to camp and find out there are 100 other kids in the space just like them, and they don't have to explain anything. And suddenly taking that dose of medication at noon in the middle of a school day isn't as big of a deal, because they know across town or across the state, there's another kid doing the same thing.
Right. Francine, I think you have a question. Get on mute.
I was wondering if there was any networking going on with other camps in the area where you can share ideas of how what innovative things have been doing.
We haven't had, we certainly have had the opportunity to share with the other camps in the Serious Fun Network that we're a member of, because we interact with them on a regular basis. We have not had much interaction this year with other camps, just the speed with which we've been moving. And, other camps, I understand day camps are sort of beginning to open, and other camps that aren't serving kids with serious illnesses are weighing out sort of what kind of program they may be able to still operate this summer. So they're balancing, are we going to try to develop virtual content, or are we going to still hold out and hope that we can salvage some sort of in-person experience? But we're happy to partner and share, and that is the strength and beauty of the camp network, is that we've all camps, regardless of who you serve and how you do it, are so collegial and willing to collaborate and share great ideas. There's no proprietary sense.
Well, and I'll just jump in and say, because I see someone's asking about, interested to see how the summer programs go. We'd be delighted to come back and share that with you. But the microsite that I mentioned is going to go live on Wednesday, and it has both password protected spaces for our medical campers, but we made a very deliberate effort to create programming that's open in what we call a general session. It won't have the same Zoom or facilitated experiences, but it still is some creative camp programming. And our hope is that the whole community will come, and you start to have, kids that maybe are friends of kids that have medical illnesses join in the programming, and that we're stitching together all these communities in an online space. So we hope if you're interested, if you follow our social channel, we'll be sharing out the URL, and you can come and sort of check it out. There'll be new programs released every week. So yeah, if you're interested, you can kind of follow what we're doing while we're releasing it.
We're going to try to make this presentation and video available on Monday through our blog. We'll put those links in, Amy, and we can connect with you about it. I guess the question I have is, what can we do to support what you're doing? What do you need? How can we support you?
Always a great question. And, I think we're thrilled with these kinds of opportunities just to spread awareness and visibility. And, We don't charge campers or families anything for any of our programming. That's a tenet of sort of the Serious Fun Network, recognizing all these families are facing financial challenges just in caring for their kids. So there's always the opportunity to donate and support. We'd love to talk about partnership opportunities. If there's expertise people have that can contribute to our programming or our success, once we're able to convene groups, there's always work projects and opportunities at camp to get involved and help maintain the infrastructure or sort of create additional spaces for kids. You can always volunteer at camp once we have those opportunities open again. It's life-changing for the volunteers and staff, and to come and just be in the midst of these kids and watch them sort of elevate their game. You've got to be on the top of your game as well, and you will walk away from that physically exhausted, but really recharged emotionally and mentally as being a part of that. And then we love to get the word out. So if there are opportunities to make presentations or to share the great work that we're doing with other groups, we would welcome connections to do that.
Well, Doug, I know we've all learned a lot, and I'd like to have people share with you what their takeaways are from this, and if they have any suggestions for resources in the community. But I just kind of like to go around. We have a group of about 30 that have been following this all day, all morning. So just give everybody a chance to unmute and share what you learned, how you've been moved by it, and any ways that you could think of supporting what's going on. So whoever would like to begin with that. Eric, I'm going to start with you because you're always good on the spontaneous, and I know you've been taking lots of notes. So
you're talking about Eric Helber?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Well, I have been taking lots of notes. Unfortunately, I joined the meeting very late. I've only got about 2 minutes worth of notes, so I appreciate it, but I better pass.
Let's go to Eric Helber, Eric Fretz, then. Actually, who I was just thinking about, Eric Fretz, who's in the middle there of my picture. So.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was very interesting to hear about. I work a lot with the scout troops, and I was just sort of running in my head like, oh, isn't this interesting that you could sort of do this thing that's normally very intense in person. So usually, obviously, we just take the troop out for a week, but I don't know. I was very entertained is the wrong word. I was very whatever. It was very inspired, I guess is the word. They're very inspired to see that they were able to replicate this and build this sort of virtually. I don't know that I had any particularly deeper thoughts, but I just, I know what a big deal some of these outdoor camping, group affiliation type experiences are for young people, and I'm working with healthy ones that aren't under a ton of other stresses. So I think this is awesome.
All right. Anybody else? Jack, you want to tap in there? Jack Schwab?
Well, I really like the idea of the virtual because you can involve children, I would imagine, from any area. Is that correct? I mean, they don't have to be near your camp. They could be anywhere in the country, right?
That, and they could have any diagnosis, and they could have any ability to, they could be hospitalized and still participating, which becomes a barrier to some kids. If they miss their week of camp because they're too ill, then this still can provide opportunities to be involved.
That's a great idea. To make it a nationwide or a global activity. Thank you, Jack. Anybody else? Kendra?
Go ahead.
I'm just going to call on people randomly because it's hard to do this, but Kendra, you're out there?
Sure, yes. I just think it's amazing that it's gone from 1 week to year round. And I think that my daughter missed a 5.5-week canoe camp this summer, and she counts the weeks leading up to this from the day she gets home. And it's just amazing that you're able to provide this to this super challenged community of families and students. And you're going to be able to do it with many more touch points throughout the year. So I'm just very moved and inspired by what you're doing. Keep it up.
Patricia Warner, are you out there? see the name, but I don't see her on there.
Yes, thank you. I had to unmute.
Okay.
My name's Patty Warner, and I have the privilege of working with Amy and Doug and watching them and the rest of our program team deliver this amazing service to our families each and every day. And it's a privilege and an honor. And my job is to connect to the best of my ability our donor community to this mission. And so if any of you are interested in sponsor opportunities, we're developing an entirely new corporate portfolio of opportunities for businesses to engage in these virtual experiences and helping to deliver these programs. So keep an eye on our website and or contact us for more information. So thank you.
Patty, I think this does give a unique opportunity for donors to actually see where their money is going. That's one of the frustrations I think sometimes donors have is they can't see results, but donors here can see immediately where their resources are going, and they can actually participate virtually. So it's a real great opportunity. Thank you.
I agree. We are still struggling with the extent these spaces are private versus public and what aspects of the camp experience can donors participate in. In the past, we were limited to 8 donors for each closing campfire. And now our closing campfires are virtual. Do we allow donors to participate, to view but not participate, or to actually participate? So we have another round of decisions to be made, but it's still very exciting. And you can imagine the point of view that I have, which is, the more the merrier, but we have to really keep the focus on our campers and their families and protect their spaces while taking advantage of these opportunities to let donors engage. Because truly when I look at what a nonprofit does for the community, it does its direct service for families, but to engage volunteers is really another mission deliverable of ours. And now we have the opportunity to further engage our donors intimately. And where are those lines and where are those decisions being made? So it continues to be exciting, and we love the feedback from each and every engaged individual who wants to participate.
Patty, I want to read something that came across from my daughter-in-law the other day, written by a person called Leslie Dwight. And I thought this was pretty inspiring. I'll put it up on this feed, but it says, what if 2020 isn't canceled? What if 2020 is the year we've been waiting for? You're so uncomfortable, so painful, so scary, so raw, that it finally forces us to grow. A year that screams so loud, finally awakening from our general ignorant slumber. A year we finally accept the need to change, declare change, work for change, become the change. A year we finally band together instead of pushing each other further apart. 2020 isn't canceled, but rather the most important year of them all.
It's very important. I agree.
All right. Any other comments before we wrap up? I'll call on Scott. Scott, you've asked a question already. What's your takeaway from this?
Well, I saw someone raise their hand. You just muted yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Ben. I was just going to say, the organization that I work with has had to do a lot of the similar adaptation. Obviously, we hold a lot of leadership development, in person kinds of programming, and have had to move a lot of that into virtual. It's kind of, it's encouraging to see how a lot of organizations, and particularly these, you guys have really the innovative juices going, and we're learning a lot and adding to things that we can do that adds to our programming going forward. So I'm just encouraged by sort of how folks folks are really taking the what is a difficult circumstance and creating new meaningful experiences that are really going to be with us going forward.
Thank you. Well, Doug,
Very impressive, Doug.
you have any
Thanks, Scott.
have any closing remarks, things you want to share with us? I really am very deeply moved by this. I hope it's really an opportunity for somebody. I don't know if I could help you, but a case study about this, because the whole idea of resilience is something we're all really exploring now. And I love what you're talking about in terms of opportunity. This crisis can be opportunity, chaos can be a chance to create something special. So you guys have done that, and I'm excited to hear what happens over the summer. It's going to be a lot of work. A lot of work. Anything you guys want to say in closing?
No, I think we just appreciate the support of the community that always recognizes the work we're doing and why it's important. And yeah, we look forward to sharing any additional lessons learned and the experiences and outcomes, but we're excited.
Amy, you want to wrap up?
I would just echo what Doug said, and I would, it's my first time joining this community, and just grateful to hear all your voices and have your support. And I think one of the things I'm learning about technology is how it can be both distancing, but also very intimate. And I think the gathering here today probably felt more intimate to me than if we had presented to you in a physical space. So that's one of the things I like about how we're using, the opportunities for technology right now. I think there can facilitate more intimate experiences. So thank you for inviting us and sharing your thoughts with us.
Amy, I have a question here from Jack, which is, how can I make a donation or refer someone to camp?
Yep, donations can just be made on our website. It's just northstarreach.org. As far as there's information about volunteering, but I think Doug and I may share our information as well. But people can contact me directly. Like I said, we're a very small organization, and if I get a call and I can't answer it, I can have one of my team members handle it. So since I've met you all virtually and feels like very personally today, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, let's all give applause here. I think this is a fantastic presentation, and we look forward maybe in September to hearing back from you again about how the summer went.
Absolutely. Look forward.
All right. Thank you very much.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob.